Scientists are unsure if climate change directly affects hurricanes, but there is evidence that it could. Before we talk about that, let's go into the basics of climate change. Climate change is a long-term change in the temperature or weather patterns of a climate, and hurricanes are formed partly through the hot ocean water and specific winds. So climate change, logically, could affect hurricanes because it can change the specific winds and temperature of the area, causing stronger or even more hurricanes, which is shown through the data collected by the GDFL. Even though there isn't overwhelming evidence for either side, we can still speculate based on data that it's very possible climate change affects hurricanes. And if we follow the data that a change in climate does affect hurricanes, that effect leads to an increase in hurricane frequency, intensity, and duration, which will lead to a more deadly outcome.
In preparation for a hurricane, there are many things you can do in order to stay safe. One of the most important things to do is to have a plan. You should have a list of phone numbers of people you need to contact in an emergency. Next, you should make a supply kit. The supply kit should have important, life-saving supplies to help you in the event of a hurricane. It should have emergency food and water, emergency medicine and medical supplies, and emergency power supplies like flashlights with extra batteries. You should also have your important personal items with you, such as medical documents, wills, passports, and personal identification. You also should make sure that everything is ready for evacuation, including your house, car, and pets. In order to research hurricanes, scientists have been flying modified cargo planes into hurricanes in order to record and document them since 1942. They also use something called a drop sonde, which is dropped into hurricanes to measure the pressure, temperature, and humidity of that hurricane.
The worst hurricane disaster in U.S. history is widely considered to be the Galveston hurricane of 1900. This storm made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane and traversed northward across Texas and the Great Plains. It then turned east over the Great Lakes and traveled across the northeastern United States and parts of southeastern Canada. There were an estimated 8,000 deaths associated with this storm and $30 billion worth in damage. The New England hurricane of 1938 was a Category 3 when it struck the coast of Connecticut and Long Island. Sustained winds of over 120 miles per hour were recorded, with maximum gusts of 180 miles per hour. This hurricane was responsible for an estimated 600 deaths and over $300 billion in damage. Quite possibly the wildest hurricane the U.S. has ever seen was Hurricane Ivan in 2004. This hurricane made its first landfall in Alabama. As it moved inland, it produced over 100 tornadoes across the southeast. It turned east, moved off the coast of Virginia, went back south, and made its second landfall in Florida. It then traveled across the Gulf of Mexico, where it made its final landfall in southwestern Louisiana and later dissipated. Maybe the most noticeable threat with hurricanes is the extreme wind. Sustained winds of over 115 miles per hour are common with stronger storms and can cause extensive damage to buildings and landscape. This wind can rip off things like signs and roof materials, turning them into dangerous flying projectiles. The most deadly hazard associated with hurricanes, however, is storm surge. Storm surge is the abnormal rise of water along the coast generated by the storm's winds. The coastal flooding that results from storm surge can cause catastrophic damage to coastal communities. Another significant hazard is rip currents. Rip currents are essentially the opposite of storm surge. Instead, currents form along the coast that pull water out to sea. What's dangerous about rip currents is that they can generate even when the storm is still hundreds of miles away. The second leading cause of hurricane-related deaths is inland flooding. This flooding from heavy rains can occur hundreds of miles inland and linger for several days after the storm has passed. One hazard that is often overlooked is the formation of tornadoes within hurricane systems. These tornadoes don't typically form near the eye of the storm, but rather on the outer rain bands.